What if the epicness that we sometimes spend our entire lifetime searching for exists not in spite of the boulders, but thanks to the boulder version of you, that these boulders inspire you to become? Often, when we least expect it, life thrusts us into the role of the reluctant Shero or hero in our own story. How we respond in those moments can be the difference between thriving or just surviving. We believe that our story will be determined by how we dare to answer one burning question: how to choose to live. Join us as we explore the mindset shifts, innovative strategies, and captivating stories from my own life experience and those of my truly epic guests. So let's get this started. What a special episode for the How to Choose to Live podcast. And I could not be more appreciative that you are choosing to be here, because when we are releasing this, if you are watching this on the release, you know that this is the very last day that we will ever experience 2024. And wow, what a year. And so I confess that I really racked my brains of who I wanted to feature for this episode. And I think you'll very quickly see why I chose this amazing superpower to be here in a conversation with us today. So today's guest is known for her jaw-dropping adventures from literally around the world. She has spent 20 plus years in the US Navy, leading teams on extremely dangerous missions and extreme situations, in conflicts and war zones all over the world. She now has become so passionate about using that wisdom that she gained to help people develop resiliency, to deal with their own challenges in business, in sports, and of course, even in life. Today, she wows audiences with her keynote presentation. Resiliency is your greatest superpower. And of course, the resilient leader way of life. So join me in welcoming Suzanne Lesko. Suzanne, welcome to the How to Choose to Live podcast.
Thank you, Meridith, for having me. I'm so excited to be here today and very grateful to spend this time with you.
It's amazing to have you here. So, as you're listening to this, you know that a big theme for us is that even though we try really hard, some of us harder than others, but we try really hard to dodge those boulders and not deliberately walk under them. But regardless, there are often those moments in life where we get forced into the role of the reluctant hero or Shero in our own story, and sometimes in other people's stories, and those big boulders hit. Well, the truth is that I have found, and I found that a lot of my guests have found, that when all that dust settles, we often discover that it's not in spite of those boulders that we raise ourselves out of the ashes, even though we do, but it's thanks to those boulders that we then discover our wings and just how high we're capable of soaring. So, Suzanne, I know you have seen some boulders in your life. So, share with us, what were some of those significant ones that really have made you who you are today?
Well, I'll start with just the basics, Meredith, and you speaking about soaring actually and soaring to new heights. One of the first ones I can really relate to is during our time in flight training, and part of the curriculum is to go through various training courses, and one of them is called SEER School. It's Survival, Evasion, Resistance, Escape School. And I can remember being out in the field. We were in northern Maine, and it was freezing cold. It was December and just cold in the northeastern part of the United States. And part of the training was, looking at your map, working with what we called a battle buddy, and someone that would be there to help you navigate the terrain. So, with the great fortune, I was set up with a Marine sergeant, and we were, hiking up in the mountains. And because there's just a lot going on, they actually try to throw a lot of stuff at you, because if you're just focusing on one thing, then you can miss something else. So that's why they kind of throw various scenarios at you. And as we were hiking, we had our packs, and I had my canteen actually, and it was on the outside of my jacket, not inside, so insular. And because the temperatures were freezing and below, my water froze. And I was like, what am I going to do now? Right. So obviously employing some of the SEER techniques and survival techniques of learning how to survive in the wilderness. If you're ever captured, or you find yourself in that kind of unique, diverse environment one day. And so my Marine sergeant and I were like, okay, we got to do some quick thinking, put it under our jacket. And I can remember the Navy chief that was one of the instructors at the time yelled at me, and he's just like, what are you thinking? And it was just, it goes back to like, what do you need in life? You need food, water, air. And so, that was a big lesson. And it may seem like, wow, how does that relate to other, monumental things in life? But I think just keeping it down to the basics, and part of that is like Maslow's model of survival, right?
Yes.
Food, shelter. And my water bottle froze, and he had to bring, a new one. And I was just thinking, man, he would have maybe taught me a hard lesson, and allowed me to go through like that, and just realize, man, I'll never forget that again. So that was, one of the boulders initially in some of my training, going into the fleet, that I really remember was like, okay, that's never going to happen again.
So that's interesting. So how old were you, Suzanne, when you made this decision to, go into the military at such a really extreme level?
I think it goes back to my family. A lot of my family served. My dad was in the Air Force, my sister was in the Navy, and we were always taken to various bases growing up in Pennsylvania. And my dad and mom would always take us to really amazing events, and I got to experience a lot of the military, and other aspects of what you want to do when you grow up.
Mhm.
So that was kind of the start. And then, then going to the Naval Academy and kind of seeing what was possible. And I thought, that seems like something I would love to do. And that's kind of how it all started.
That's so wild. I will share with you that when I got out of Georgetown, I felt like, I'd been to this amazing prep school. I had been to now this amazing university, all these professors. But I felt like, and that's maybe one reason why I'm fixated on this question today, the one question that I felt that wasn't really answered well was, yes, but how should we choose to live so that we can take our last breath whenever that happens, looking back, saying, this was incredible. And so what I did, and the reason I bring this up, Suzanne, is that my boyfriend and I at the time, we decided to save up enough money and embark on traveling the wilderness, the wilds of Canada for about 9 months. And so it meant multiple days in the wild where we would not see human beings. A couple of times where we had everything from, his down jacket caught on fire as he was trying to light something, and we had food stolen by bears, stolen by mountain goats when we were days away. And I'm curious whether you found that in those moments, extreme moments, whether it was part of this training or when you were in dire scenarios around the world, that for me, that was one of the most profound lessons about not only the fragility of life, but about this quality called resilience, right? I think my definition of resilience shifted thanks to realizing that I was just this little tiny human being instead of, you know, the center of the universe. How would you say that some of those experiences have helped you define resilience, and what is resilience to you today, Suzanne?
Well, that's a great story, Meredith, and I'm sure you could relate. That's similar to Steer School with your experience with your boyfriend in Canada. But I think resilience really is about, and what that moment taught me about, have yourself prepared. It's all about preparation, adaptability, is that, you're only as good as your last day, right? And what you learn from that, what you bring to the next day, what you iterate, and then move forward to your next thing to make it even better, even more optimized so that you can live your best life. But getting through that experience, it's really about bounce back ability to pivot. And I really feel that's the core of resiliency, is being able to take whatever life throws at you and being able to almost alchemize it so that you're like, okay, I'm stronger. I am more informed. I understand that. I'm not going to do that again. And being able to have that bounce back ability that you can, almost like a willow tree, you're able to bend, not like an oak tree where you just fall over and break, but you're able to say, you know what, that just happened, dust yourself off, get back up, and, be able to navigate the life's journey ahead.
I love that. And I think that one of the subtle between the lines that I specifically resonate with what you just said as the definition is I think that sometimes well, first of all, I love that you naturally include iteration as part of a successful plan. Because I mean, uh, share with me whether you think you would agree that it is not necessarily the plan itself that proves to be like the strength of a mission. It's your ability to iterate and course correct. And it's that not to prevent change, but to adapt and adjust and pull from the wisdom and experience of the past that gives you that ability to be resilient in that moment. Speak
Exactly
to that.
right. And the only constant is change. I used to have one of my bosses in Baghdad. He always used to say, "Hey guys, we're in a combat zone. It's a war zone." And the only conflict or the only constant is change. So as you're navigating situations, if you go in with that knowing, okay, I might have some adversity, but I know I can pivot or I'm going to learn from it. And I share a lot of this in a lot of the leaders I work with in organizations as well, is, you only can take that intelligence and what you learned and then apply it to the next thing and again, make it better. And once you can have that mindset, you put it in your toolkit. I call it the superpowers. It's like another arrow in your quiver. And you're able to just navigate and be like, you know what, I got this. Take a deep breath, get grounded, and just be able to hold that presence wherever you go, and not be surprised, or your emotional refraction period is so much less. You don't like mull over it for days. You're just like, okay, that just happened. Let's assess the situation. Let's make an informed decision. Let's surround us with the right people if we don't know the answers. And even if we did fail, we fell forward to success. And I think it's how we think about it in the global environment, and also, even within our curriculums, our universities, is failure's okay. It's okay to fail as long as you learn from it. And it happens in the training part, right? There's moments in life and in high stakes environments where the margins are razor thin, and you really can't afford at that moment to make a mistake. It's much better to do it in training.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that you naturally brought the loop back to the second piece that I love that I hear from you. And it really is, uh, I feel that where we're particularly aligned, Suzanne, and if you're listening to this, think about this. We often refer to resilience as if it's almost like a reaction. It's something that maybe you are born with, or you dig deep and here is this terrible scenario. I need to be resilient. Poof. And that it happens in the moment on the battlefield. Well, I can tell you, my battlefield was when that frickin' boulder fell on my daughter. And had I not faced so many boulders before that, that inspired me to ask different questions, to my own form of practice, right? Practice learning, asking different questions, finding mentors, finding guidance, so that when I found myself on my battlefield, I was able to appreciate the value of having built those muscles in my inner game. Does that resonate with you? That, in a sense, that resilience that we aspire to have is often part of a process of little tiny successes, which we need to acknowledge and say, oh, I did pretty well on that. Even if it's driving a different way to work every now and then, it's change, and great, give yourself credit for it, right? But also saying, instead of like, oh my gosh, a boulder fell, it's like, where's the gem in the middle of this boulder? I know it's here. Does that make sense, Suzanne?
Oh, absolutely. It's total in alignment, Meredith, with what you and I talked about earlier in our conversations leading up to this. And also it's like a muscle, right? It's just like when you work out, you lift weights, you do strength training, and it's having that state of readiness. So resiliency is actually an arm of readiness. It's having that ability to know it's already within you. And when you cultivate it on a daily basis and you have these micro wins, then it's those micro wins that actually create the macro wins and results in life.
Yes, I love it. And to take what I also feel like I'm hearing between the lines is it's those little micro wins that help you tame the inner narrative that says, oh my gosh, this is unfamiliar. Oh my gosh, this is scary. Oh my gosh, this is hard. And in a way, it desensitizes us or shifts us away from our earlier definitions or fixations on what we're defining as hard, impossible, all of those words that we put in the present tense statement, that we might as well drop the boulder on ourselves, by using that kind of language. So I'm really curious. I know that part of your story, what you teach, what you share with people, is about this great warrior advisor, Xena. Share with us the story of Xena and how you use stories to help people build their own resiliency.
Well, I think, people can relate with stories. Meredith, it's one of the oldest things in humanity, actually. It's how we communicated and how we remember things, right? So when you share a story and you share something that's in alignment with who you are, and it comes from, it emanates from your beingness, then it can land with various audiences um and be able to have them relate to something that you experience. Now, it may not have been the exact environment, the exact scenario, but we're all here together. We're in this together, whether we like it or not, right? So you can choose that healing, you can choose that suffering, in kind of, how you approach life. And remind me of the question again. Sorry.
Perfect. So we're talking about Xena. Sometimes when we get kind of in our own way, to put it bluntly, the things that can kind of shake us out of it when our own mind is going on this crazy destructive narrative, right? That you can't do this and that's too hard and that'll never work. And look at all that proof, right? It can help to eh, deliberately refocus your mind on a story or someone else's life or someone else's heroic experience. And I know for you that Xena, the warrior advisor, is a story that you often mention. And so I'm curious whether that story, whether you've known that, whether whether that ever pulled you through any of those moments and how you use that to foster resilience in those that you coach and teach.
Great question, Meredith. So, with a lot of the leaders and organizations I work with, specifically, I'll share how it started in the military. And a call sign is something that is not that you give yourself. It's something that's given to you by your peers and the people you serve with. And so I'm sure you probably remember there's a series, Hercules and Xena, and kind of goes with the whole superheroes like Wonder Woman and the movies that are coming out. And yeah, and so that's it kind of what boded well with my personality and just how I approach things. So continued that throughout my Navy career, especially in aviation. Everyone called you by your call sign. And then when I transitioned to public affairs, still my aviator friends would share that. And then I used my first name as well. And it wasn't until, coming in as a tech leader and doing business development, go-to-market strategies, that a lot of my peers were like, Xena, that's awesome. Like, use it. And so it kind of reemerged recently, actually. And, when I think about my whole career and everything I did from joining the Navy till, when I retired as a Navy captain, it was always advisory in a sense, right? You're taking information, you're looking at the situation with your subordinates, with your leaders, with your general officers, specifically going up to global events and being at the table, leading these missions, and you're in that advisory role. So it just kind of fell in place, right? So just kind of is my own innateness, like Xena is my innateness, right? And it's
Yes.
that warrior sense, and I think women and men can embody that spirit. We all share masculine and feminine energies. And
Yes.
when we think about structure, that's, okay, I'm going to have a routine, structure my life. That's masculine energy. Okay, I'm going to be in flow. I'm going to be creative. That's more, feminine energy. So it's being able to interplay that as you approach your day, and also as you approach very complex situations. And so bringing that essence into whatever I do. And that's kind of, I would say, what has evolved in Xena, the Warrior Advisor, and that moniker of approaching situations and really learning how to master your environment.
That's so powerful, and what it makes me um kind of skip to, what it makes my mind think of, Suzanne, is have you ever, let's say, named yourself? I mean, where I'm going with this is sometimes when I'm working with clients, what I will suggest that they do is take that kind of counterproductive, that quote unquote own worst enemy part of their mind, and those thoughts that tend to just pull the parking brake when you're speeding down the highway, right? And wreak havoc, and give that a very disrespectful sort of name, because it kind of separates that from your personal identity in that moment by saying, Poindexter, thank you for sharing, get over there, and realize that what if the true version of Suzanne is Xena, and that when I need to show up as that epic version of myself, that it's Xena and I together. Has that sort of, that name, do you feel that by adapting monikers and things like that, or that we can really build and nurture that confidence in ourselves by kind of taking deliberate control over how we define that epic version of ourselves, even to the point of, turning it into a superpower?
Great question. You touched on a lot of things there, Meredith. I think first and foremost is the quality of our life is determined by the quality of our questions. So if we start our day with, what would XYZ do, or how would this relate? I think that is a good question to start whatever situation you're facing. And a lot of times it's asking your question, what does wild success look like today? Like if I was wildly successful, what would that look like? And every day it might be different. And, call sign or a name or something you look up to is a great thing. But let's face it, we all have inner critics, right? We all have this imposter syndrome. Oh, what am I going to do? How am I going to show up? And I think it's really being grounded in yourself and being authentic and true and raw. And when you think about just social media right now and having podcasts that we can share these, I call it like a virtual coffee, like we're sitting across from a table, having a coffee or tea together, and being able to share these raw, authentic stories that people can relate to. It's not canned. This is real time.
Right.
And we can be who we are, show up who we are. And I think the more you're aligned with who you are, in your brain, your heart coherence, and how you show up, then that calm presence allows you to tackle whatever comes your way, and you have less and less of that imposter syndrome or something that isn't quite aligned. And you'll know it, if you're very in tuned and you've experienced, and I talk a lot about sleep hygiene, like getting really great rest, which is one of the main things to really accelerate your outcomes in life and your results. Being able to have that is allowing you to really navigate, that authentic self versus turning up the volume and the frequency on that imposter syndrome.
Yeah, I love that. And I love, I mean, to go back to the whole Xena concept, I think that when you are in full Xena mode, there are certain thoughts that Xena would not, Xena wouldn't think that kind of thought. And kind of to your point about the imposter syndrome, um, I, I think all of the times, let's say when I got that call, when I was on the plane going to Colombia, as much of a perfect storm of negative emotions that my mind was in, at some level, still had a freaking choice per se. It was not the easiest moment to make the choice because emotionally I was not at my best, but I realized, thanks to all the other boulders that had fallen in my life, that in that moment, that own worst enemy presence could not be who I was. I could not allow certain thoughts. And believe that for me, one of the most kind of profound discoveries out of that experience was even in our darkest, most terrifying moment, it's almost like Will Smith, and I think it was called Underworld or something like that, where he talks about fear is not real. Danger is real, but fear is just a story that your imagination tells you about something that has not yet occurred, that may never occur. And so which choice are you going to make? In other words, which thought are you going to access, and how are you going to use your imagination, your ability to envision right now? So I love your emphasis on the questions that you ask, the language, and I mean, can we prevent that first little spurt of something negative coming through? Probably not, but we don't have to give it traction. Would that be your experience? Like when you were in some of the most dire moments, and I'm sure there are tons, was there a moment when you had to step in there as the sovereign of your own mind and say, this is Xena's moment? Only Xena gets to be here right now. Anyone who's not Xena, go wait over there.
Yeah, that's a great question, Meredith. I think there's lots of times like that, lots of situations globally that happen. And it could be not only in a military environment or a corporate environment, but it could be traveling, on a plane and the situations that happen there and unravel as we transit, right? As we go to see our friends and family, as we spend time with loved ones, especially during, the holiday season. And I think a lot of times, we look at our minds, the mind can actually be a bad neighborhood. It's which neighborhood you choose to go in. And you can put your foot on that accelerator and say, I'm not going in there, right? Because what you focus on expands. So not saying that those thoughts don't come in, they do come. You can say, thank you very much. And you stay focused on your mission, and you only allow things into your life mission that is elevating and cultivating your desired outcome. And as other things come in, you just learn to pivot.
Yes, I love that. So, I know you talk a lot about resilience superpowers. And of course, my thing is learning how using your inner game to unleash the most epic version of yourself, meaning empowered, purpose driven, innovative, collaborative, and not only inspiring these qualities within yourself, but then in the lives that you touch around you. So, I'm curious, which of the resiliency superpowers that you talk about do you feel really contribute to learning to sometimes recognize? You have to recognize that you even have the capacity to be epic, right? But much less to unleash it. What resiliency superpowers do you think?
One that's most salient, and I think it's part of the Resilient Leader Way protocol, is most recently, and it's been kind of a theme this year, is adaptability and preparation. And I go back to preparation, Meredith, because think about, you're preparing for a college exam, right? And what do you need to do to master that exam, right? It's studying, it's maybe talking to your professor, it's focus. Maybe you do things that you didn't normally do so that you can focus on getting that good grade, because that's going to amplify and elevate you to get into the career you want or go into graduate school, all these different factors. But I think most importantly, preparation leads to having just a more spacious life, right? If you employ a lot, I know we talked about Dan Sullivan's book, uh, 10x is easier than 2x. So it's very much approach to transformational living, right? Because if you're 2x, you're very transactional. You're like, okay, what do I need to do now? You're not using your mind in the best way to be productive. But when you're prepared, you actually are more productive because you're able to focus on, just say it's doing interviews for the day, or say it's just doing administration work, or it's having a free day and being with your family and your loved ones and being able to do what you want to do and having fun and being out and getting some sunshine and vitamin D, in some of this gorgeous weather. Maybe it's up north going skiing right now. But I think when you have preparation, it kind of keeps you at a relaxed nervous system, right? You're like, okay, anything that comes my way, I can adapt and pivot. And you're not, trying to do 10 things in a day that maybe you should just really do two. And again, it's asking these great questions. What do I need to do today? What would a wildly successful day look like? Maybe it's just going for a walk with your kids, maybe it's finishing up a creative project. Maybe it's just, going to visit loved ones, where they are and traveling to them, or being out in nature, which I think is really important to realize the biomimicry of nature and how that calms our nervous system, and realize we're all in this together, and so those are some of the things I most saliently, I will say it's been preparation, adaptability. The more prepared I am, like for delivering a presentation or a keynote or anything else in life, the more relaxed and the more you have the creative freedom to do really cool stuff. And you can bring in the levity, the humor, you can be improv because you can think on your feet and you're understanding the dynamics of the world, you're understanding what's going on, and you understand your environment, your audience. And so a lot of the things I learned in the military and high stress, high stake environments, it's just a translation into now what I do in business and life.
I love it. And so now I'm going to ask a question that I think is being channeled to me by some of my clients who say, okay, preparation. I'm still preparing. I'm not ready yet. I'm going to prepare some more. Oh, I might make a mistake. I think I'm going to prepare some more. Speak to my wonderful listeners here who might just have an itty bitty tendency to get stuck in the quagmire of analysis paralysis versus saying, I am prepared.
I think it comes down to just having that sense of calmness and peace, Meredith. And when you have that sense of calm, you're like, you know what? I got this. Whether it's doing your rehearsal breath work, whether it's doing uh, mock interviews with someone. Say you're a lawyer, right? You want to read your case or read your what you're going to share to the jury. Rehearsal, rehearsal, rehearsal. And when you rehearse, you can kind of knead out those kinks that happen and realize, okay, that came up. If that happens, I'm going to do this. Same thing with chair flying, right? Before you fly a plane, you chair fly, and then you go in a simulator, and then you fly the plane with an instructor, and then you fly the plane. So it's basically, being able to say, you know what, been there, done that, I got this. And a lot of it, and I can relate to your audience, I know we've talked about this, is, it's that I call myself a recovering perfectionist, because you're like, oh, no, wait. I gotta dot the I, I gotta cross the T. And again, like I shared earlier, when you have razor thin margins, yes, that's very important, right? But most of the time, probably 95% of the time, it's not like that. And you can really have a lot more enjoyment, improve your quality of life, and have a better outcome just by knowing, okay, it doesn't have to be perfect. I just have to head in the right direction. Sort of like, flying a plane, driving a car. Okay, we just need to turn left. Does it have to be a hard left, or, what are we doing here? And then you set yourself up for success, and you're also more graceful with yourself.
I love that you brought up the concept of perfection. And I think this is one more thing that's really, really important as we conclude 2024, is I I often kind of ponder with some of my clients, okay, let's pause for a moment. Define perfection. And is perfection truly that state of when everything is right? So this is the one way, when kind of to your point, if you, let's say, had set out that flight plan and you program your plane, and dang it, it's on the perfect flight plan, and no matter what, you're not course correcting at all, chances are it would prove itself not to be so perfect. So I think out in the world, in nature, in the environment, if you really think about how life or how the world or even how an airplane really proves perfection isn't quite the way we human beings have been interpreting it. It is what you said earlier, that ability to adapt. That is the perfection. It's flow versus flaw, right? It's that fluidity that is truly perfection and harmony, right? And so I think that, um, what I love that you express so well is that it is that harmony and the wisdom to find the sweet spot. And I think what you didn't mention that I will hop in and emphasize and share with me if you think this is your experience too. But I think that sometimes finding that sweet spot and being able to like champion ourselves and to what you said, yes, I did it. I've got confidence. It goes so much faster when you have another human being, a coach, some of the people who were your superiors in the military to not only call you out when your water bottle froze, but to call you out and acknowledge you when you're doing something well, when you perhaps have gotten tangled in your own self-critique. That's, I think, one of the most valuable things that coaches and mentors can do for us is help us relax, to your point, Suzanne, into those moments when we are showing up as epic, whatever that looks like to us. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It's all about trusting the process, Meredith. Like trusting, okay, this thing is happening for me. It's not against me. What am I learning from it? And when you take that student approach or consummate learner approach, life just kind of flows, right? It's not getting so caught up in the weeds of things that aren't working. It's like, what is working? And then asking yourself, and your peers and your coaches can do this too, is like, what am I celebrating today? Like, I had a win. Yes, not the other part, because you'll go down a rabbit hole, but it's really checking in. And this goes with leading your team and your troops in high stake environments, in the battlefield, in the boardroom. It's being able to say, let's just check in. How's everyone doing today? And not like talking about the past. Where are you right now? I'm feeling tired. I'm feeling anxious, whatever it is. And then feeling the collective, and then as a leader, being to assess the situation and then bring it together into that harmony and that cohesiveness and coherence that you're speaking to.
That's fabulous. And so before we get into our final three questions, I'm curious, as you look forward now into this collection of moments that will call themselves 2025, um, relative to resilience, what would you say is one of the most important, I think, thoughts or focuses um, in the playground of resilience that you would encourage people to be aware of and maybe even to concentrate on, to commit to as they go into 2025?
I think it's really communication. It comes down to communication with yourself, Meredith, with your family, with your loved ones, with your community. And when you are in communication and alignment, that's when things work, right? It's when you're not communicating, not out of alignment. We saw this a lot in the military, even as a communicator, like, okay, we're communicators. We didn't communicate, say a press release didn't go out as it at the right time it should have, right? It's like, okay, did we not communicate that, at the staff meeting or whatever happened? And really learning from it, right? So I think communication in business and life is one of the most important things we can do to ensure the seamless transitions. I call them velvet transitions, and accelerate outcomes.
I love it. So, first of the three questions, Suzanne, um, I want you to imagine that we are hundreds of years in the future, and for whatever reason, access to some of the wisdom of how to choose to live has gone away. And so now you have the opportunity to miraculously appear and share maybe three little pieces of wisdom, three gems of wisdom to help the human being of the future begin to answer the question of how to choose to live. What would those three gems be?
So I think those three gems, just off the top of my head, would be: first, trust the process; second, trust yourself; and third, everything happens for you.
Yes, amazing. So, on to the second question here. So as I hinted at earlier, I really have come to the point in my own life where I know we set a lot of goals, but I feel that sometimes those setting the goal throws us into the back seat, like the little kids. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? And we tend to wake up every morning and go, have I hit my goal? Oh, I haven't. And so automatically we can be on this weird spiral. So where I have come to is the place of believing that we have one goal and one goal only. And that is to be taking that last breath, being able to look back on our own quirky little life, feeling like, oh my gosh, that was freaking epic. I hope I get the chance to do this again. So, from where you stand right now, what would you say are a couple of things about your life that you've either been able to experience, contribute, achieve, observe that would allow you to be able to say, oh my gosh, mission accomplished. My life has already been freaking epic.
I will say first and foremost is alignment to your values and living by your values, Meredith. And whether that's, your faith, your family, being a source of love to yourself and to others. And to always remember, and I've shared this with a lot of other friends and colleagues in my tribe and in my inner circle, is slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And that really improves your quality of life because all you are is the dash, right? There's the year you're born, and then we don't know when we will leave this time here. And I think it's really what you do in the dash. So it's really living a life without regrets. And I think we live like that. And going back to what Leonardo da Vinci says, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. Keep it simple, and life improves. Your quality of life is amazing no matter what environment you're in. And that's how you can master your environment and master your life.
Woo! Fabulous. Fabulous. So, on to the third. And it's funny how you've kind of segued us naturally to this third question. And so, the third question would be um, if you were to discover that that big boulder is dropping at some point within the next 2 years, what is it that you might now risk doing, risk striving toward, risk reaching out and making an impact with that you haven't quite done already? And how might you start approaching that? What might you do differently, if
Well,
anything?
yeah, I don't think I do anything differently because I live in a state of readiness and preparation, and I don't have regrets.
Yes.
So, when you say you had a terminal illness, let's just use that as an example.
Yes.
You may say, I really wanted to visit my homeland with my family. Let's do that this year, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of movies and stories based on this, and then they find out, oh, they're okay, and they're like, man,
Right.
I'm not going to stop doing that. I'm going to continue doing that for the rest of my life now, because you don't know what will happen. It's not, something that you can predict, right? So it's
Right.
really about living the moment and being at peace with the moment and knowing you did the best you could in the situation and having grace with yourself and just
Yeah.
keep iterating, going forward, and again, live your best life.
So if you could, let's say, design the next 2 years that for you would be quintessentially epic, empowered, purpose driven, innovative, collaborative, what would that look like, Suzanne?
I think it's really just, again, doing what I'm doing. And then on a global scale, being in my homeland of Slovakia, visiting family members
Mm,
there with my family, going and breaking bread together and telling people you love them, like on a daily basis, don't hold back, because again, you don't know what tomorrow may bring. And I know you and I have both been in situations like that. And, you're with someone one day, they're not there the next, and we still are. So it's having that gift, that legacy to continue pressing forward
yes.
and living our best life and traveling where we want to travel. And, whether that's a kayak tour down in Patagonia or being able to, travel to Europe or Africa. There's so many beautiful places in the world to see and to really see that we all are alike. We all want that sense of happiness and better for the next generation. So I think it's really just being present and designing it and taking those micro actions daily to be in that 2-year vision.
Could not be more beautiful message there. And so before we share with people how to stay connected with you, I'm curious of your thought to you who are listening as they wake up on January 1st, 2025. What would you say are maybe some of the first words that they might play with saying to themselves from Xena, the warrior advisor, so that they can step into this very first day knowing that there is that epic version of themselves, even if they haven't felt like they have seen it for a very long time?
I think the very first question is, what am I grateful for? Am I breathing today? Did I wake up? Do I have my warm cup of coffee or hot tea, my lemon water? And then kind of reviewing the previous day and say, what was so epic about yesterday? And what do I want to take into today and then tomorrow? And keep planting those seeds of epicness, like you say, and live an epic life. By taking what you loved and continuing doing that and sharpening your sword, so to speak, and continuing to stay focused and on target with your truest desires.
Mm, fabulous. Fabulous. So, as you're listening to this, that was Xena speaking. So, I mean, come on. You can't go wrong for 2025 with those kind of thoughts. And again, on a more serious note, as you are listening to this, um, I think the point here is not simply specific words, but it's the love that you spoke to, Suzanne. It's the what are you focusing on? Are you focusing on the presence of the joy that you want to feel, the impact, the imagination, the creativity, whatever lights you up? Can you, even just for a few moments, release the focus on the lack of the presence and take that language that is addicted to this things not going right, the flaws, the need to course correct, and realize that it's a beautiful dance, right? And it is having multiple dance partners, the one that takes our breath away, as well as the one who clumsily steps on our toe, that helps Suzanne and I and you live this, look back on our lives and be able to feel like we have truly freaking lived and that we've been able to impact, hopefully, others in a positive way. But it begins right in here. It begins right in here with that language and acknowledging and being willing to be your own champion sometimes, right? If you hit that hole in one and nobody else sees it, it still happened. Right, Suzanne?
Yes, yes,
Yes.
absolutely,
Yeah.
Meredith.
Yes. So, Suzanne, share with these wonderful people listening, how can they stay connected with you? And of course, I know some of you have your own events. How can they connect with you, get you on their stages, get you to speak to their teams? Where can people find you, Suzanne?
So the most joyous and active part, I love sharing great content to help people on LinkedIn, thought leadership, things on resiliency, things I learned just by going through life on a daily basis. So LinkedIn is definitely the place to find me. Also my website, SuzanneLesko.com. And yeah, let's again remember to have fun in the process, Meredith, as well.
Fantastic. So, well, Suzanne, I just want to acknowledge you for all that you have done, not simply just being here on the How to Choose to Live podcast, but really all the lives that you have touched and all the ways that you have worked with the process to help that become a framework of philosophy that you can share with others so that they can take what often otherwise on our own can take an entire lifetime. And yet you've made it part of your mission to say, yeah, but I don't want you to miss this incredible potential within yourself and within this moment. So kudos to you, Suzanne, for everything that you've done and for bringing Xena to the world. And thank you so much for joining us on this very special day of the How to Choose to Live podcast.
Thank you, Meredith. It's been a pleasure.
So here we are on the cusp of a brand new moment, a moment that neither one of us have ever lived before. Perhaps you're watching this and it's even the cusp of a new day or a new year completely. But whatever it is, this is a moment that is craving being part of that epicness that you are creating right here, right now, going forward. So, my call to action to you today is to start deliberately and intentionally designing this moment's variation of you and who you choose to show up being. What is the story that you are going to create from this collection of moments that are happening all around you? What are you going to focus on? And what are you going to insist that the thoughts that have traction in this moment with you, what do they show up looking like? Who are you going to show up being? So take a moment to pause and name that version of you that is resilient, that is willing to occasionally get things wrong and remain confident. Because what this version of you, this superhero, this epic version of you that's empowered, purpose-driven, innovative, and collaborative realizes that confidence is not some outdated version of perfection where there's one version that, gosh darn it, never needs to be iterated or never needs to flow and adapt and change, right? This super epic version of you, give it a name. Find your Xena, right? And start getting to know that epic version of yourself. Learn to lean on that epic version of yourself, and then take a moment to commit to waking up every single moment to that voice of your Xena. What is that going to look like? How is that going to ensure that you are committed to intentionally showing up being whatever feels like the most epic version of you today in this moment? Remember, we are not going to step forward killing our moments, because what is that mission, that one goal? It is to be taking that last breath, feeling, oh my gosh, this was freaking epic, right? So how can this moment contribute to that epic? So yes, it's perhaps waking up to words like, I am exhilarated by the day ahead. I cannot wait to see what lies ahead in this process. I cannot wait to learn and see what are the mentors in this world going to give me? What are the anti-mentors? And how can I find the gems that often show up looking like the impossible things, and yet they go on to make a profound positive impact in who I am going forward. I am the sovereign of my own mind, and I am here to play and to get my hands dirty and figuring out, what am I going to make of this crazy, quirky adventure that we call life? So, what words are going to inspire you? And I would encourage you today, when you name that super epic version of yourself, to then write down maybe 5 sentences to put on your wall or maybe put on your bedstand right next to you and commit for the next 30 days. Those are the first words that will get you started. When something seems just a little bit out of reach, I find a way. That is who I show up being. And that is that epic version of myself speaking. So the idea that you have to settle for coexisting with this own worst version of yourself, this enemy within, get over it and banish it. And I would encourage you for that to be part of your new year or new moments resolution, is that no longer is that a mandatory part of your life. Yes, those thoughts will come flitting by, and yet it is up to you to say, sorry, you do not get traction. So as you step forward, whether it is your new year or your new moment, seize it. Let's finish this episode by picking a name for that superhero version of you that will be at your side when you face those boulders, and that will encourage you on and give you words that, yes, deserve to have traction because you are the hero and Shero in your story. So I am Meridith Alexander, Chief Excitement Officer here at Grit Mindset Academy. I can't wait to see you on the next episode. And yes, if you have been finding some gems within these episodes, I hope that you will get out there and you will share it with the people that you know, and you will like and you will comment, and that most of all, that we will see you in our next episode. So thank you so much for subscribing to the How to Choose to Live podcast, and go out there and do something epic. Booyah! Woo! And happy new moment, you.